Welcome back to Outside the Arena. I'm Griffin Senek alongside my co-host Rob Goldberger. Happy to be finally back after I think what was a 6 month or so hiatus, but we're back today. Got a lot to talk about. A lot of news. Obviously, we just had the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup Finals wrap up. Congratulations to the Nuggets and the Golden Knights. We saw the NFL draft happen a few months ago. Some big NFL storylines we're going to touch on. But we are going to start with the most relevant news, which happened yesterday. Bradley Beal finally out of Washington. He's going to be heading to the Phoenix Suns to form a super team. Seems like that's always what Kevin Durant's on these days. KD, Booker, Bradley Beal all together. Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, and a whole bunch of second-round picks. It's a mess going back to the Wizards. Deal's not finalized yet, but Rob, your initial thoughts, obviously huge blockbuster news in the NBA world.
So my initial thoughts are, number one, that you're not going to see a no trade clause given to a caliber of that player, I think, for a very, very long time, because I think it handicapped the contract that they gave him, handicapped the return so badly. But it also presents a little bit of a dilemma for some of these smaller market teams, because it's either you lose a guy like Bradley Beal for nothing in free agency, or he signs for $5,250, and then 3 years later he has almost negative trade value for a player of that quality because of the trade clause, because you're paying him $50 million a year. And the best, you're getting back is I'm sure the Clippers will give them a couple of juicy things for Chris Paul, because that's where it seems to be where Chris Paul is heading unbelievably almost. But I mean, yeah, it's just funny because it seems like everybody on the planet could see this coming except for the Wizards front office. But like I said, it's tough for a small market team. It's tough. I mean, it's almost why they have to build through the draft and hit on multiple draft picks, not just one or two, like the Wizards did with Beal and Wall. It has to be consistent. But it just kind of seems like everybody saw this coming except for the Wizards front office. So yeah, that from a Wizards perspective, that's what I think. And then I'll touch on the Suns after you share.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Wizards are making the right move, at least just finally entering this rebuild. They've kind of been in this, they're like not terrible, but they're not good. And they're just like in this middle ground where they're competing either for like the 8 seed or the play-in. And that's just not, I hate the teams that like tank, but at the same time, like you got to know when to move on. And I think the Wizards in this case are finally making the correct decision and saying, we need to start tanking basically and try and get to the top of the draft board. And like you said, I mean, that contract just hindered them. I mean, for a player of Bradley Beal's caliber, they basically got nothing in return, which is pretty crazy. It was a straight salary dump, which they had to do, and it makes sense for the rebuild. You're, freeing up a lot of salary. But that said, obviously, you don't really get anything in return for your franchise player that's been there for, I don't know how many years, but he's been there a while. He's been so elite. Yeah, and you get nothing in return. It's unfortunate, but I'm happy for Bradley Beal. I think he's the real winner out of this. He's going to go get to play with KD and Booker, we'll touch on that in a second, but that's going to be a very interesting trio. But out of Washington, he'll be able to compete. That Suns team, regardless of the lack of surrounding talent, just those three alone, you expect to see them in the playoffs and in serious contention in the Western Conference. But for Washington, yeah, just finally tearing it down, making the right moves. And, unfortunate for that fan base, but at least, this is hopefully the steps towards progress, whereas they've just been in kind of this middle ground, which is almost worse. So, yeah.
For sure. All right. So from a Suns perspective, obviously, I think there are depth concerns. Obviously, I think there are injury concerns when you have three guys who are frankly injury prone. All three of them are. I would be surprised. I think I'd be frankly surprised if KD or Beal played above 55 games apiece, that number apiece next year. But I still think people are massively overthinking this, okay? The KD and Booker barely played together last year. I thought that they clicked magnificently I thought Devin Booker was so outstanding in last year's playoffs. I think I think he's taken his game to a whole new level where I'm ready to call him one of the 8 or 10 best players in the league based on what he's doing every single playoffs run. He's so ridiculously efficient from the field. So I think people are overthinking this because the Suns were the only team, I think, to even legitimately give Denver a slight push. They were the only team to bring Denver past 5 games, even with their chemistry being low due to KD not really playing. And then you add Bradley Beal. Like I just think, yeah, they don't have a lot of depth. Yeah, the defense isn't great, but like KD, Booker, and Beal are playing together. I think that they'll be the team that'll present the biggest challenge to the Nuggets next year. And I think once they actually get a lot of games together, people will forget about these depth concerns and this and that. And yes, are they going to have maybe the record for the most minimum guys playing on the bench next year? They might, but I don't know. If they can remain healthy, because that's obviously what derailed the Kyrie Harden, KD super team. I don't. I guess it'll be deemed a failure if they don't win a championship, but I still think this is a team that's, people are saying, oh, they're going to win 42 to 44 games next year. That's just not something that I believe, and I think people are overthinking it a little bit. I think I don't hate it for either team, honestly. I just think the Wizards, return was a reflection of that no trade clause and just that horrible contract.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's funny. You said like, yeah, things will, click, or they'll be able to play more when or they'll be able to click more when they all play together. But then at the same time, it's like you said, like they all have injury problems, which
Yeah.
was the issue in Brooklyn. I feel like the Brooklyn situation was obviously a little different just because of
Personal.
Kyrie.
Yeah.
And you had the whole COVID dilemma. He was hurt, Harden was hurt, KD was hurt. It was
They
just
were all hurt.
that was a
Yeah.
huge mess, and you had all these conflicting personalities. I think Devin Booker and Bradley Beal are a lot different from Kyrie Irving, James Harden, personality wise, but also, I think there's an argument that those two right now are, as good, if not better. I mean, Devin Booker is playing at an extremely high level, like you said, and Bradley Beal is an elite scorer. I think, it's this team, if they are all healthy and they all get some games in, like you said, it should click and they should be elite. I think the thing that interests me the rest of the offseason is the DeAndre Ayton situation, because there's already been turmoil with him there. You think maybe if they move him, then you could, fill some depth pieces. I mean, it's almost like if you can move him and get 2 to 3 like bench quality players, that could be a huge deal for them just for depth
If you're another
purposes.
team around the NBA, right? Like, you don't want to bail Phoenix out. Like giving them anything for DeAndre Ayton is bailing them out. And I think owners, I've read Chris Haynes articles. I've been reading a little bit of Woj and Sims, and it seems like I'm sure it'll happen with somebody eventually, but it kind of seems like a lot of these other teams don't want to give Phoenix, because the view around the league, at least from what I've read, is that giving anything for DeAndre Ayton is just bailing them out of trouble, and you're basically getting negative value. You're basically giving negative value. You're getting negative value no matter what. And I get if you're a young rebuilding team, but what's the appeal at this point for a team like the Pacers or the Pistons for DeAndre Ayton? I
Yeah.
don't think there is any. And I know the Pacers obviously signed into that offer sheet last season, but I don't see that happening. I don't see them pursuing that again. So I don't know. I think that there's a chance that a lot of teams might just say that, DeAndre, all we're doing is helping out the Suns by giving, taking on DeAndre Ayton's contract.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and it'll be interesting to see. Um, looking at the Suns in comparison to the rest of the conference, I mean, they obviously have the best trio of players, I think you could say, in terms of talent and star power. Um, looking, I guess we can kind of shift over to talking about the playoffs this year and just
Yeah.
where the Nuggets stand or the Suns stand. Obviously, Denver is we saw, I think, this playoffs. I think this team and Nikola Jokic really earned the respect that they deserved. Obviously, Jokic, the 2-time MVP before the season, arguably, should have been, a 3-time MVP in the eyes of many people. But, it seemed like he never had that respect around the league and from NBA fans until this postseason. This team proved, very, very hard to beat. They lost 4 games in the playoffs. So looking at them, do you think Phoenix right now, like, how would you say they match up in comparison to the Nuggets? And then some of these other Western Conference teams, obviously, you've got the Lakers. They kind of had a good end to their season. Young, teams like the Grizzlies and the Kings, maybe, where do you think the Suns kind of stand?
I think the West is I think last year, like it was a shit show last year. I think it'll probably be a shit show again this year with Denver's the clear best team. I think Denver and Phoenix are the 2 clear best teams. I think I'd probably take Denver to beat them in the 7-game series as of right now. Again, because man, like as great as Jokic is, and he's probably at this point one of the 15 greatest players to ever play the game. I mean, really, like if you look at his accolades, they're right there with anybody's. But man, Jamal Murray is just so good, because this guy, he's a borderline all-star player in the regular season. I'm not saying he's not a great player. He is a great player in the regular season. But, I mean, this guy turns into one of the 5 or 10 best players in the game every postseason. everybody, he averages 30 every postseason. This wasn't just people thought that was a bubble thing, and then he tore his ACL, and then he came out and did it next year. I respect Denver a lot just because their roster is constructed so excellently around Nikola Jokic. I think there are a lot of teams in the NBA that could learn how to better construct a roster around their superstar from them. I mean, as great as Jokic is and as revolutionary and generational as he is, they have built. I'm not even as this like they've just built the absolute perfect roster to maximize his talents, and he's able to maximize everybody else's talents around them. I think that they're the clear best team. I would have liked to see them against one of the top dogs in the East, though. And I get Miami deserved to be there. I'm not saying they didn't. I just would have liked to see them against Boston, Milwaukee, Philly. Even I just would have liked to see them against one of those top 3 seeds that weren't Miami, because I think Miami Jimmy was hurt by the end. He had that ankle issue. I think they sort of run out of gas. I don't know. And I'm not saying it wasn't. There were a lot of really entertaining games in that series. It's just I don't know. I would have liked to see. That's the problem with upsets. Sometimes you see it in the NCAA tournament. You're like, damn, now I'm watching this 11 play.
UConn, San Diego State.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
Yeah,
no, I agree. I think Denver, you got to give them their props. I mean, the way
of
they played
course.
throughout the regular season and in the playoffs, I still think they're better than Phoenix. And like you said, until they're stopped, Jokic and Murray, that combination, you can't beat it. And their surrounding players, like you said, MPJ, Aaron Gordon,
ACP, Bruce Brown,
even Christian Braun.
Yeah.
They got all these guys. They just, I think, traded for another first rounder this year.
Yeah,
There's some weird trade with the Thunder.
Yeah, it was.
So, I mean,
basically the Thunder have too many first round picks. That's how the trade can be summed up.
But yeah, this team is they're just assembled perfectly. They're well coached. So Phoenix, you got 3 superstars, and then it's kind of a mess from there. So we'll see if it works out. Obviously, they're going to have the eyes of the whole NBA. I mean, those 3. I mean, it's such an interesting situation because you don't really have a true ball handler on that team. You have a true point guard. You got the other outside of if Aiden's there, then the 5th person starting is God knows who at this point.
God knows
and then
who,
there's no bench. I mean, it's just it could be a total shit show. It shouldn't, but it's going to be fun to watch. Let's shift real quick to the East. Like you said, I want to get your thoughts. Obviously, your Philadelphia 76ers came up short once again. They hire Nick Nurse as head coach. Doc Rivers finally out of there. But what are your thoughts on what this team needs to do this offseason? Obviously, it seems like James Harden is gone.
I think he'll be back based on reporting. So I think he was gone 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think he was all but gone 2 or 3 weeks ago. And then I think Houston was like, we're not going to offer you a max. You don't have a max waiting down here for you. And ever since then, the reporting and shift from Shams and Woj just sort of been, it went from, he's torn. And then there was a Chris Haynes article actually that was there's 70% chance he's back. I wouldn't be. So here's the thing about the Sixers, right? I went to game 6. It was the worst game I've ever been to. That was the game they were leading. They were up 3-2. It was the best. So that game 5 was the best game of the Embiid era. They dominated from start to finish. It was Joel's best game as best playoff performance as a Sixer. He had 34, 7, and 5 blocks or something like that. And then we come out. It's the same thing every year. And so much of the blame goes to Joel and James for not showing up in game 7. So much of it. So that's the first thing I want to say. But man, does it seem like this happens to a Doc Rivers led team every season, Griff? Every season. I mean, going back for how many years? 20 years, this guy. But he's one success, and he's 16-33 in elimination games. Why is he been allowed to coach 49 elimination games? Whatever. I'm just the late game offense for the Sixers was putrid, and then it kind of seems like they just gave up against Boston. I'm getting a lot of emotions out. I've been buried for a couple of months here, but look, I just think I'm not ready to give up on the Sixers like a lot of people in the town are. I think the whole trade Embiid thing was crazy after we lost in the second round. I understand people's sentiments because we've been doing the same thing over and over and over again. It just sucks because we've been with 3 game 7s, dude. 3 second round game 7s. We can't get the job done any of these times. I mean, game 6 though, game 6 at home when Tatum was cold the whole game and then he made 4 threes in 5 minutes to close it out. That was brutal because they were up 2 with 5 minutes left and they just basically couldn't score a bucket. And I think that's how so much of the late game offense stagnates. And Tobias Harris, man. I've ripped into Tobias Harris so many times on this podcast, but when you watch him and you're like, man, this guy's being paid $40 million this year. Like, think about what we could be doing with that money. You could have like the Celtics. They could bring Derek White and Malcolm Brogdon into their guard rotation. Like, those are the difference. That's the difference between these two teams. And also the fact that outside, James Harden had 3 really good performances that series. And then for 4 games, he was the worst player on the court. That can't happen. He needs to be. He can't either be a superstar or trash. That can't happen. I don't know. The team will be better. The team, if they bring Harden and Embiid back, the team will win 52 games or around that again next year. But I don't know if they'll get out of the second round. I just don't know. They didn't have a better opportunity than this year. But they say that every year. And you know what, Griff? I'll be right back around invested saying that they're going to beat whoever they're playing in 7 in the second round next year. So those are my thoughts, at least on the Sixers. Then I can let you take it over. Sorry, I just rambled, but I can
No,
let you.
you're good. I mean, I knew I was going to get that out of you,
Yeah.
so that's why I kind of wanted to ask.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's such a tough situation because I think, like you said, like if they just bring Harden back, like I don't see any way that they just miraculously go on a run and win the finals. Like I just don't think. I think we've seen this at this point for, like you said, years now, and it's just not. I mean, we saw it with Ben Simmons, and we've now seen it with Harden for what, like 2 years? I guess he's been on the team, and it's just
Yeah,
not.
I give him a pass for the first year, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, this
but
year, I mean, it's just like, and this year, for the most part, this team was fully healthy in the playoffs, I believe, right?
I mean, Joel had a bad injury, but yeah,
Yeah,
Joel.
but I mean, Joel's always hurt, so I
But
guess,
that's a whole different issue, though. It's like if you
yeah.
about uh,
Um, I don't know. It's a tough situation. I think Nick Nurse is definitely a better guy to have in charge, and you got to hope he unlocks something just out of this team. Or, Tyrese Maxey. I mean, he's such a great player. He would almost have to take, it feels like, another leap for
yeah,
this team to
definitely.
really
Yes.
make that jump, and that might be the key. So I don't know. We'll see. The East is very interesting. Obviously, the Bucks are going to be always good with Giannis. Celtics are always, right in the mix. The Sixers, the Heat in the playoff time are just somehow the greatest team of all time.
I don't know.
Um,
I don't know. It's just I just want to bring up one quick point because I feel like
yeah,
everyone like him. If Harden leaves this year, did you know that the Sixers would only have $8 million in cap space freed? How crazy is that? 8 million because of the Tobias contract. So you're basically the problem with not bringing him back would basically be telling Embiid like, oh, like stick around a year and like
yeah,
wait for
you'd have nothing for.
yeah,
I mean,
like
then next year would absolutely be a wash.
a while. Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. So that's the issue. Telling you're nearly 30-year-old franchise guy that so
yeah. Well, I saw this actually. I forget who did it. It just came to mind while we were talking about Embiid. But with the NBA draft coming up, I want to play a little game real quick. It's
sure.
going to be, would you trade this player for Victor Wembanyama? Obviously, he's going to become a Spur on whatever day the draft. Is it Tuesday or no, Thursday, the draft? The
I
22nd or
think it is Thursday. Yeah.
Thursday. So, in honor of the NBA draft, we're going to play a little game. I'll give, like, I got a list up of like the top guys. So, I'll give you, like, I don't know how many we'll do. We won't do too many, but just out of curiosity, start off with some easy ones. Nikola Jokic. I feel like that's a consensus. Easy, no.
No,
Giannis, no.
no,
Luca, no.
I wouldn't. No, Lucas too young.
Tatum, no.
No, no, you can't trade Tatum. He's been to 4 Eastern Conference Finals at this point. You can't trade him. You can't trade
Yeah.
him.
This one I think is a little interesting. Joel Embiid.
No, I wouldn't trade him for. I think if you're not going to trade a guy like Tatum, I don't think you can trade a guy.
Embiid is 30. He's had injury concerns. I still wouldn't do it, but I think in a year, if we were having this conversation like 1 or 2 years from now, it'd be a
With Vic,
yes.
like the thing is with Vic, like I do think he'll become an all-time great. But at the end of the day, if he becomes what Joel Embiid is now, like nobody's going to be too upset at that. Like he's not a bust if that happens.
Yeah,
Like
very
that's
true.
how I'm viewing it. And obviously, I'm
Right.
biased, and
And
he'll turn 30 next year. But I don't know. I mean, the guy's
you
still
got to think about it more, not as like a right now, but like just for the course of the franchise. Because obviously,
no, I
right now,
know,
you're going
but
to take all these guys over, but just like for the future, like
yeah, all right. Keep going past Embiid because I think this will probably be where I start to.
Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I'd probably trade Kevin Durant for him at this point.
It's a tough one. it's just, I mean, you got to, if we're thinking about, I guess, teams aside, or yeah, I feel like, but how old's Katie? Like 33, 34 at this point?
34, I want to say, maybe 33.
34, 33. Yeah, it's so tough. I mean, with the Suns now making this trade, I'd say no, but
30.
I don't know.
Turns
I don't know.
35. Turns 35 in September too.
Yeah, then you probably do that. He's getting up there. Steph Curry, I would trade
That's a
Steph.
tough one, man. Because I still think Steph is so good right now.
I do too. I just think
Incredibly good.
I don't think I think the Warriors championship window is shut.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, although I would be behind that statement more if they were in the. Well, I think Draymond is probably out of there, right?
I don't know where Draymond's going to go. Maybe he could go. I don't know
I wouldn't be
what's going to
surprised if
happen
he
with
ended up in
Draymond.
Dallas. I wouldn't be surprised if Draymond ended up in Dallas.
That'd be fun. That'd be interesting.
Yeah,
Steph
Kyrie.
Curry.
I think Kyrie will be
Sh-
back. Yeah, I think there's a lot of speculation about Kyrie. I think Kyrie will be back in Dallas as well.
yeah, I don't think anyone else wants him to be honest. So I don't think he has much say. Shy Gilgeous Alexander.
Wow, that's a really tough one.
That's the one I forget who did the video. Shout out to whoever it was on TikTok. But this was one where they were like, wow, that's really tough because he's, a young superstar, just average over 30 a game.
Man, I'm such an SGA fan. Like I've always been such an SGA fan. But I think for Wemby, dude, I think I would probably trade him for Wemby. But this is a dude that's 24, like, and he's gotten better every year he's played. Every year he's played.
Yeah.
It's tough, but I think I'd go Wemby. I think I'd probably trade him for Wemby. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's so tough because
That
it's
is
like, oh,
that's probably the toughest one, honestly.
yeah. I would say the Thunder would do it. So I'll say yes. We'll just do a few more here. Dame Lillard, I feel like that's an easy yes at
Yeah.
this point in his career. Ja Morant, that's a very interesting one.
Yeah.
Mr. Gun
Yeah.
himself.
25 game suspension.
Yeah, it's a
Dude,
tough
but the
one
way
though.
the way Silver was and like the NBA media was talking, I thought he was going to be gone for like 50 or 60 games. I mean, he
No,
had
they weren't gonna. They did. He's too much of a face for like the younger generation that I think. Obviously he's messed up, but they don't want to take one of their superstars out of the game for too long.
people around him, bro. Like at the end of the day,
Yeah, it's a tough one though. That is a really tough one too. If he can like stay out of trouble, then you might want Ja.
the problem is
LeBron, obviously, yes.
LeBron at this point. Yeah, I mean,
Now we're kind of get into these are easy, like Donovan Mitchell.
yeah,
Yeah, Jaylen Brown, yes. So,
Jalen,
um,
I can dribble Brown.
Anthony Davis.
Yeah, yeah, always damaged.
Jimmy Butler, yeah. All right. Well, I think that does most of the
It's definitely an interesting thought
interesting ones.
experiment though, because it's like I
What
think
about Booker?
Devin Booker,
Oh.
like straight up for Wemby, Devin Booker. Can you do that though? Can you do that to a guy who just averaged like 35 on like 50% shoot, 57% shooting in the playoffs?
I wouldn't do that.
I
I
don't think
think
I'd do
Devin
it either.
Booker's too good.
Devin
He's
Booker
too
is
good.
still only what? He's still 25 or 26, right? Like,
Yeah, he's young. You got
oh,
to think it's so interesting because you think about Wemby and all this hype he's gotten, but like, dude is like he hasn't even played a game yet, and like, I mean, obviously it seems like he's going to be a superstar, but we really don't know, and it's crazy.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's absolutely
I'm of the camp that I'm not really. I don't think he'll be a bust, but I do agree with the point you're making. Like, what if he's just like?
it's good. Someone said like
I think the far more interesting turn. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, you. I was just going to say I forget who said this, but the media is making it seem like if this guy turns into Kevin Durant, he'd be a bust. Like,
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. That's what I was saying earlier. Like if he ends up in this like AD, like Embiid or like whatever tier, like the guy's not a bust. He's one of the greatest big men to ever play the game.
yeah.
Like I mean,
The
yeah.
problem is he's got the LeBron hype, and after LeBron has, I
And
mean,
after
we
LeBron
haven't we
actually came
haven't
in,
seen a prospect like this theoretically since LeBron, and seeing
yeah,
how LeBron has turned out as a top two player of all time. Now the pressure's on Wemby to be of that caliber and be a top 5 great of all. I mean, I think you could say he was overhyped if doesn't finish his career as a top 5, 10 player of all time, like easily.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of media overhyping, I agree, but I don't think. I just feel bad for him at this point because
Yeah.
he has such
Oh, the
a,
pressure is crazy.
and especially because there are some dudes behind him too in this draft. Like Scoot Henderson is he's a motherfucker, dude. Like that's like I don't know.
Yeah.
I also think the talk about drafting Brandon Miller over him too potentially is absolutely nuts. But that's a whole another point separately.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Wemby's going to be a great NBA player. I don't know how great he's going to be. I'm not one of those guys. I find those people annoying. Like you see them on TikTok or like on Twitter that are like, oh, like they it's so clearly because they just want to be contrarian. They're like, Wemby's going to be a bust. He's going to like shatter all his bones his first year in the NBA. Like, how's he going to guard and beat or Jokic? Like, who can guard and beat or Jokic at the end of the day? Like,
Yeah.
he'll have
Exactly.
just as much success as anybody else guarding those guys. So that's my, I think he'll be great. I mean, I hope he succeeds because there are going to be so many people waiting to tear him down as soon as he gets in the Spurs jersey.
Yep. It's going to be very interesting to watch. We'll talk a little more next week about the draft and kind of what goes down. Obviously, outside of that first pick, it kind of gets a little fishy. Teams might be trying to trade up, trade down.
Yeah.
So if any big moves happen, we'll talk about them next week. I want to jump over. We'll end the episode by talking some MLB, unfortunately. It's been a rough year, but we'll switch to the NFL for a bit. And I want to talk about the storyline of the entire offseason, in my opinion. Aaron Rodgers traded to the New York Jets, huge blockbuster deal. Obviously, the window is now for the Jets. It's uncertain how much longer Rodgers is going to play, if it's going to be a year, if he's going to play for 2 more years. Seems like he's having fun in New York. You see him out at Taylor Swift concerts, at,
Him and
Knicks.
Sauce Gardner seem to have a
Yeah.
budding. Yeah.
I mean, the Jets, obviously, one of the best young cores in the league. So, Rob, what are your thoughts? Obviously, I was looking at, I forget, I think it was maybe ESPN that posted it or something, ranking the top quarterbacks in the NFC. And it is an absolute joke. The NFC
Yeah,
is
it's
such a joke compared to the AFC.
like
The
I think it's
AFC has, it's crazy how, like, if you put, like, let's say the Cleveland Browns in the NFC, like, the Browns are probably like a 3 or a 4 seed in that conference.
Yeah, probably. I think the Browns will be good, by the way, this year, but that's the whole
Yeah. Well,
discussion.
the
We'll
Jets. What are your thoughts on the Jets and
we'll talk
Rodgers?
about that later. But no, I love the trade for the Jets at the time. Like you can't roll into like if they had any sort of competent quarterback play. No disrespect to Mike White. I love Mike White, obviously. But I think, they probably would have walked into the playoffs last year, honestly.
Yeah.
Their defense is good. They've got so much young talent, like you said. They've got what's Mackay back? Should Becton be back this year? Is he going to be?
I think he's like competing to start at right tackle. Is what the latest I've heard.
I remember. It sucks for him, man, because he was, one of the more highly thought of offensive line prospects in the league, and he just,
Could they have? Was that the Tristan Wirfs draft?
Yes.
And Tristan Wirfs went after.
It went Thomas.
Jedrick Wills.
I know Becton went last. I can't remember if Wills or Wirfs went first.
I think, yeah, I forget. Okay, but Becton was last.
Yeah, that was the 2020 draft. Hold on, I'll check right now because let me fact check myself.
It was definitely Thomas at 4. I feel like Wirfs was like
no Becton.
Wirfs
went last. Becton went. You're right.
Yeah.
Wirfs 2. Thomas went at 4. Wills went at 10. Becton went at 11, and Wirfs went at 13. So all in similar ranges. But yeah,
well, Wirfs instead of Becton. I mean, oh my God, that would have been.
Yeah. Oh man. Trust me though. Becton would be the superstar with Tom down.
Oh yeah, he would have been the greatest O lineman of all time. Yeah, in terms of
no, but listen, I think the Aaron Rodgers trade was an absolute necessity. I mean, I think the whole situation, leading up to the trade was super weird to the point where I was doubting if he was going to get traded or just straight up retire. Which I mean, that wouldn't be too out of character for Aaron Rodgers. But look, I mean, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be really freaking good next year. I think he was playing through an injury like all of last year. He was the back-to-back MVP before, he was the reigning back-to-back MVP before last season. I think he's going to be fantastic in the AFC. Do I think the Jets are going to be good enough, at least right now, to beat the Chiefs or the Bengals? Probably not. Do I think that they can win the AFC East? Yeah, I do. I actually really do think that they can be better than Buffalo this year. I don't know how much I believe in the Buffalo Bills. I actually think outside of I think their roster outside of Josh Allen and Diggs, who by the way seem to, that relationship may be getting a little bit tense, or at least
Yeah.
Diggs' relationship with the Bills organization. I think their roster is pretty mid. And I think that they get, they're kind of the Philadelphia Sixers of the NFL almost. Every year that they're really good in the regular season, people start to hype them up, and then every year it's the second it's an early exit for them. And I don't know, I have faith in Aaron Rodgers. Like, I'm never gonna disparage Aaron Rodgers. I know he wasn't himself last year. Like I said, I thought he was hurt. I think it's a trade you absolutely have to make. I don't feel bad for Zach Wilson because of his personality and the way he's acted up until now. But I did feel kind of bad for him when Sauce Gardner and the rest of the Jets defense is openly lobbying for Aaron Rodgers on Twitter, saying now we've got a real quarterback here. Are they wrong? No, they're not wrong, but still maybe maybe not the best thing to put out there publicly. But I don't know. I think Rodgers and Jets will work out. I just don't know if they're Chiefs or Bengals level good.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, I think the Chiefs and Bengals are the elite of the AFC, and like you said, like Buffalo, I feel like. I mean, I'll never forget the media hype they got before the season last year. I mean, that was unlike anything I've ever seen. That was the crazy. It was like they played a close game with the Chiefs, and everyone, said this team was going to be. I mean, I've never seen. It's like it's still to this day. I ranted about it last year. I've never seen every analyst and every personality pick one Super Bowl team to win it, and then they got bounced in the fucking divisional round. Like, I mean,
yeah,
like
and down they got their ass beat. And remember that they lost to a Skylar Thompson led. They should have lost to a Skylar Thompson led Dolphins team.
It's just, I mean, Josh Allen's a great player. He obviously had the elbow injury last year, but we've seen this team. I mean, like you said, they've run it out there the same year. They brought in Von Miller. He tore his ACL. Obviously, I don't know what his status is this year when he'll play, because obviously that happened late in the year.
So a lot of Bills fans, the Bills fans I follow on Twitter. Sorry, keep going. I was just saying.
No, I don't.
The Bills fans I follow on Twitter, he might be back mid-season, but he says he'll be back at the beginning of the season. You can never believe him, though. I don't. You can never believe him.
Yeah. So I don't know, but like you said, I think the AFC East is going to be really competitive. I wouldn't count out the Dolphins though, too. I think the Miami Dolphins are going to be really freaking good. I mean, that offense, especially if they go out and sign like Dalvin Cook, like that's a star-studded team, and adding Jalen Ramsey's big. What do you say?
I said you've been a big Mike McDaniel guy since he's gotten there.
I do. Sure. I really like. I mean, he's obviously a fun personality, but I think he's a good coach too, and I think that team is going to be really good. I mean, they've made all the right and big moves, it seems like, so I think they should be good. It's a really competitive division, and it's all going to depend on those interdivision games. I mean, those 6 games, whoever does the best. Even if New England's always a team that you can't count out. Obviously, like I don't think they're that good, but they're so well coached, and you can never count them out. If they go 5-1 in divisional play, they're going to win the division. So it's going to be very interesting to see. I think it's the right move, like you said, and like you said last year with Rodgers. I mean, you look at the people he was throwing to. I mean, he also lost Devontae Adams and was basically throwing a bunch of rookies. I mean, now you've got Garrett Wilson there. You've got trying to think of all the guys. Alan Lazard, who was, the guy he clicked with the most, it seemed like, in Green Bay. McCole Hardman's a big speed threat. Corey Davis is solid.
Ideally, the Jets would love another wide receiver. Ideally.
Odell, I think, would have been fun. D-Hop even would have been cool. I mean, I really wanted them in the draft. I think the biggest mistake they made was not taking Jackson Smith and Jigba in the draft. I think that would have been the most electric with Garrett Wilson, but also just you have 2 superstar young wide receivers. And that would, oh my God. I mean, it's just, they obviously didn't think that was the move. I think that will be a huge mistake. I think Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be an absolute superstar, especially in Seattle. I mean, that offense is going to be electric.
Seattle offense next year. Definitely.
That Seattle team, I mean, talk about the quickest rebuild in history. I mean, they didn't even, there was no rebuild. They made the playoffs, and oh my God. But yeah, I think Rodgers, it's going to be a lot of fun. Obviously, though, there's a ton of pressure on the Jets. It kind of feels like, obviously, Jets-Mets seems to be kind of a combo. It feels like a little bit with the Mets, like this offseason when they spent all that money. And obviously, that has not gone to plan. We'll touch on that in a little bit. But, the pressure is on. And it seems like, especially with Rodgers, the way the media kind of paints him as the villain at this point. Obviously, him and the media don't really have a great relationship. any little thing, any little mistake, it's going to be crucified. So the Jets, I'm excited to see what happens. I think they've got some of the best young players in the league, and the AFC as a whole, though. I mean, oh my God, you've got
Yes,
it's the amount of young quarterbacks in this conference is flat out ridiculous.
I just
And
love
you
Jalen.
go ahead.
Jalen is all on his own in the NFC, so that's fine with me. Fine with me.
Literally, I mean, and even like in the draft this year in the AFC South, like the worst division, you've now got C.J. Stroud, you've got Anthony Richardson, Trevor Lawrence, and then Will Levis seems to eventually be the heir to Ryan Tannehill. So you got four really young quarterbacks in the worst division. I mean, it's just it's crazy to see how weak the quarterbacks are in the NFC. But yeah, I mean that kind of does it. I think with the Rodgers stuff. Real quick, the NFL draft obviously went well for your Philadelphia Eagles
Yeah,
landing
man.
Jalen Carter. Pretty crazy, and Nolan Smith too. I mean, they had a really good draft. Your thoughts? I mean, any picks or players that stood out to you outside of? I mean, you can touch on the Eagles too, but any moves that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of the Anthony Richardson at 4 pick. Like, I don't know. I kind of think I really like him and a guy like Shane Steichen, who was obviously the offensive coordinator. Shane Steichen was the offensive coordinator for the Birds last year. I don't know. I just kind of like it. They were super interesting to me, the disconnect of how Richardson and Levis were thought of, because I think like there was this like, or at least there's this tendency to sort of group them together before the draft about maybe Richardson will go 4 and Levis will go 7 or blah blah blah, like Levis will go right after. You didn't see Levis go until pick 33. So I mean, pick 33, right? I think that's where he went.
Yeah, let me check. Yeah, 34, I think it was.
34. You could be right. Yeah. So
or no, 33 because the Dolphins lost their first round.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I don't know. I like the Richardson pick. I'm a guy who I actually think who thinks that Anthony Richardson is gonna be pretty freaking good in the NFL. I know he's really raw, but he's so young. I think I was a big fan of the top 3 guys in the quarterback class coming out this year. I think young Stroud and Richardson are all going to be pretty good. So at least that's my quarterback from my takeaway from the QB class. And then obviously I think Jalen Carter to the Eagles. I know that would have never happened with the off-field stuff, but he seems to be locked in and motivated since he's gotten here. Like you see the quotes from his teammates. It seems as though Jordan Davis was almost like his caretaker. He looked out after him at Georgia. So now that they're reunited again, I don't know. I mean, there's the first couple of days of free agency for the Eagles. I was sort of worried that obviously the team and we were getting clowned all over Twitter and social media that all our whole starting defense left. And now I think you can make an argument that this year's team is equally as talented as last year's team. I think they're going to run through the NFC again. That's my prediction. But what are other picks I liked? I mean, like you said, I like JSN to the Seahawks. I think that was an electric pick. I mean, yeah, I hated the Cowboys draft. I thought their draft sucked, which is always good. Mazzie Smith at 26, and then I mean, I'm very bullish on the Birds right now. That's basically my main takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Eagles should be the hands down favorite to win the NFC. I think the only team that could compete with them is San Francisco. I think San Francisco, outside of quarterback, has the most star power of any team in the NFL. So I think between those two teams, you'll have your NFC champion. I would favor the Eagles, but obviously San Francisco. Obviously injuries can happen, so we'll see what happens. And San Francisco, it seems like they'll go with Brock Purdy, but you've got it's so crazy. I mean, if they never made that Trey Lance trade.
Sam Darnold. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see him get a start out there at one point this year.
Yeah, I'm sure if Purdy doesn't go well, I'm sure they're just going to rotate through everyone. But it's crazy that think back to that Trey Lance pick, trading 3 first rounders. I mean, what could have been if they never made that trade? It's pretty wild.
Do you think that there was any credence to the rumor then that Shanahan actually did want Mac Jones at that pick, and that Lynch and them overruled?
I don't know. I still think they should have taken Justin Fields, and I think
I think so too. I think so too. I think so too.
Justin Fields' slide was
the Jets should have taken Justin Fields. The Jets,
the Jets and the 49ers should have both taken Justin Fields. I mean, imagine the 49ers offense with Justin Fields. I know that his throwing has been clowned or whatever, but just imagine the rushing ability with CMC, and then you've got Kittle and Debo. I mean, oh my God, like that would be. I mean, that then they would really be able to, I think, to compete with the Birds, and that's gonna be fun. But yeah, like you said, in terms of good draft picks, I think interesting ones. I think, or I liked Paris Johnson to the Cardinals. I thought the Cardinals did really well getting the Texans first round pick too. That whole trade was. I thought the Texans would trade the Cleveland pick, and then that would make sense. But when I heard they traded their own first,
Yeah, basically,
that really made absolutely no sense.
Texans have to win as many games as possible next year. No benefit in tanking for them. Like they have to go straight into winning next year.
Yeah, which is going to be a little tough. I mean, they're outside of Stroud and Damian Pierce. That offense is
Yeah,
cooked.
Laramie Tunsil. Give credit to Laramie Tunsil.
Yeah, well, I meant weapons wise.
Weapon-wise,
Larry
yes.
Tunsil's a good player, and I think they traded for Shaq Mason too, who's not terrible.
Yeah.
Um, so they got some guys on the line, but yeah, weapons wise, not very good. I guess they drafted Tank Dell, so maybe he'll turn out to be something.
Him and
Seahawks, like you said, really good draft. Um, Yeah, I mean, I think the winners for the draft have to be, Philly. I think Houston did. I think I'm happy Houston took CJ Stroud. I think CJ Stroud's going to be really good. I mean, you just look at how he played in college, and that Georgia game, I think, is the one. Like him and Fields both interestingly had like a big, like a defining game in the college football playoff. Like Fields' game against Clemson to me was the one where I was like, okay, this guy could be an absolute superstar in the NFL. And I think Stroud's game against Georgia was one of the best quarterbacking performances I've ever seen in a college football game. I mean, he was unstoppable even when Marvin Harrison went down. I mean, if Marvin Harrison didn't get injured, that Ohio State wins that game and goes on to win the national championship. So
if Jamison Williams and Marvin Harrison don't get hurt in the last two playoff games against Georgia in 2021 and 2022, 2022 and 2023, I should say, 21 and 22 seasons, you can make the argument that Georgia has, 0 national championships right now. But like if Sands
life happens. Stetson Bennett, age 26 to the fourth round pick. Very interesting. I don't know. I feel like we're rambling a little bit about the NFL draft, so we can move on.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Bijan at 8 and Jameer at 12. Bad, especially Jameer at 12.
It's an interesting pick. I mean, Bijan is like the Falcons are just like their defense is not good, and their offense is like you got these 3-star skill players you drafted, but who knows if Desmond Ritter is going to be? I mean, this is a make or break year for Desmond Ritter. If he's bad, you got to draft a quarterback next year, especially that quarterback class next year is very good as well. It's a make or break year for him, but like you said, it's going to be super interesting. The Jahmyr Gibbs pick, I mean, it just made no sense with the Lions signing David Montgomery. They had Swift too. Swift's now an Eagle, which I forgot about until the other day. So that's going to be interesting. I mean, it's interesting pick. But if he turns out to be like the thing about running backs if they turn out to be like superstars, like look, like they're going to be such a key piece of the team. But like it's just such a kind of replaceable position, and they could have used the pick better, but I don't know. Lions had a weird draft. I mean, we don't even have to get into all it, but
yeah, for sure.
All right, let's move on. We'll end the episode. Some MLB talk. It's been a very interesting year, very disappointing year for my New York Mets, unfortunately. It's been really interesting though. The Texas Rangers are really good. The Baltimore Orioles are really good. Tampa Bay is really good. The NL, it looks like the Braves are Braves are gonna, they are just unstoppable. I don't know if they're gonna. I think it might.
Yeah, the Phils
are playing well.
A huge series tomorrow. A huge series starting tomorrow.
Yeah. Mets are gonna get swept in Houston. I mean, let's talk about the Mets. Obviously, they had basically the most hype before the season, and they've got one of the worst pitching staffs I've ever seen. I mean, when your two supposed, aces and Cy Youngs are, in the 4.5s with their ERA, it's not going to be good. So, I mean, where do you even start? Like obviously the offense has had struggles. Like Lindor hasn't been great. Marte has had a very slow start. Beatty, hasn't come up and been super, he hasn't played like a stud by any means, but like the offense isn't necessarily the problem. It's been the pitching, and Scherzer has been terrible. If he doesn't turn around, like they're screwed.
So
Verlander has had a few bad starts, but like you see the flashes of him being the Cy Young. I'm not as worried about Verlander. I think
that's
he
exactly
started off the year with the injury. I think he'll turn it around. Senga's been pretty good, although a little shaky. But then after that, it's just like Tyler McGill and Carlos Carrasco. Like these guys are bums. Like they're just flat out terrible. The bullpen losing Edwin Diaz obviously really really hurt this team, but outside of David Robertson, no one in that bullpen. And Brooks Raley's been all right, but like no one in that bullpen is good, and that's the pitching has just been terrible, and I just don't see any way for this team to really recover unless one Max Scherzer and JV basically have to pitch like true aces the rest of the way. I think for this team to have a shot at a wild card, obviously the division's gone at this point. They need to pitch lights out. You know, McGill and Carrasco, they just have to be at least serviceable pitchers, and then the bullpen. I mean, it's just like they basically any guy who gets DFA'd or they can find off the streets, they'll throw in the bullpen and give him a uniform. So it's just a rough bullpen. It's been disappointing, but at this point, it's just not a fun team to watch. Like it's just like they just pitching gets rocked. I mean, they scored 7 runs yesterday and they lost, and that it's the pitching's just terrible. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
yeah, I mean, I was talking to James actually yesterday, and he was saying we were saying the exact same thing that you were that I'm way more concerned about Scherzer than I am Verlander because I think
Yeah,
Verlander. Well, I think you'll probably see Verlander back in Cy Young form by the end of the year, but
yeah,
like Scherzer just looks cooked. Like he just looks old out there.
yeah,
Like something that you never like never something that I'd see from Max Scherzer. And of course, Griff, right after you guys just have our number, man. Like because you guys
yeah.
swept, and then
We'll probably get swept by the Astros and then sweep you this weekend,
yeah, like
and then lose 10 in a row.
no, we got swept by you guys, then won our next, the 13 out of our next 15. Which
Yeah,
3 teams in the NL East have now done, by the way, over their last 15 games,
the
which is just
Marlins. Yeah,
unbelievable. I mean, Luis Arias MVP, but
he's fallen off a little bit since
no,
once the media gets you. It was an inevitable
no,
fall.
I mean, he's still hitting 390 at
No, I
the
know
end.
that
I mean,
.400 is.
if he hits 390 by the end of the year now, but look, I mean, like you said, I mean, the Mets, they've been just. I thought like I don't want to like talk shit on the Mets right now because I know like in 3 months when they're like 15 games above 500, I'm just gonna be like looking at.
No, that's not going to happen. You know that's not happening. That's just
Look, I'm trying to
there's
revert.
no way. There's no way with the pitching unless they make like a big time. Like there's just no way. Scherzer would have to. I just don't think there's any way that happens.
I think it so much depends on Scherzer turning it around, like so much. Um,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm just like more surprised about their season than anything because like I was. Look, I mean, I'll take it from the Phil's perspective at least for a second. Like, I think, like you had Nola, you had Nola struggling for a while, and he sort of like turned it down, like sort of ratcheted down a little bit. But like I don't know. I mean, I just think. Let me collect my thoughts here for a second about the Mets. I'm sort of just rambling, but I mean, the pitching, like you said, has just been so horrendously terrible. Like, I'm not really sure there's much to say past that. Like, and bullpen, like, there's just no pitching depth. It seems out there in New York. Like, it's just over and over. Like, I mean, you lost a series to the Cardinals, the Pirates. It's like the bottom of the like. Obviously, the Pirates haven't been horrendous this year, but yeah,
bottom of the bear. We are the bottom of the bear. At
you are
least
the
what it
bottom of the
is.
barrel. I mean, you guys. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that you guys are just as far from the top of a wild card or from a wild card spot as you are from last place in the NL. I think that's right. I think it's
Yeah, it
five.
might be around, probably around that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to see it, but look, like I just, I don't want to do this right now because I just think I still believe that they'll turn it around eventually. That's my prediction. I think the Mets will turn it around.
I think we're too far. Like at this point, I mean, it's June 19th. Like we're pretty far into the season at this point. That's kind of the thing. If we were still in May, I'd be like, all right, like we'll see. But like, I don't know. I think it all like it doesn't all point to this, but Edwin Diaz getting out for the year
Yeah. Oh
just like
yeah.
screwed this team because you got to think about it. Like if you had obviously the rotation has sucked and that's been like that's interchangeable, but the bullpen has been so bad. And if you had Diaz in the ninth and moves Robertson up an inning, and then like Then you've got like you can mess around with guys like Ottavino, Raley, and Drew Smith for like 2-3 innings.
Yeah, and then
But the starting pitching has been terrible too. Like the Mets, I believe, when their starter goes 6 innings, are 19-2.
wow,
Like
wow,
it's
that's a
like
ridiculous stat considering what their record is. That's a ridiculous
exactly like
stat.
their starting pitching is getting them no distance. They're just getting, I mean, fastball down the dick and it's out
Scherzer
of
is
the
barely
stadium. Like
going.
it's
That's why I saw that Scherzer is barely going into games at this. Like he's barely even.
yeah, he runs out of gas and then he just gets rocked and then it's by the time I mean he had like this guy Scherzer had a 5-1 lead against the Yankees. Against that, the Yankees lineup is. We'll talk about the Yankees in a second. And then a big lead against Atlanta. I mean, he's just cooked, I think. And the back of the rotation is terrible. The only guys right now I have like faith in are Verlander and Senga. And outside of that, the rotation is pretty cooked. So I don't know. We'll see. Obviously,
You guys are missing Taiwan, I guess. No,
we're
Taiwan.
missing Chris Chris Bassett's the one I wish
No,
we
no, no,
kept.
no, no. I know, I know.
Ty has been not very good, but
He's been good.
Marcus Stroman having the best ERA in baseball just makes me
Yeah, I
want
mean,
to.
he's been the best, arguably the best right-hander in baseball this year. I mean, just ridiculous. I know that I can imagine how badly you were fuming when he threw 8 scoreless against you guys.
I mean, I knew it was going to happen. Like that was like the most predictable game in history. Let's move away from the Mets. Let's talk about the New York Yankees real quick. I don't know about you. Well, first of all, this team is. I mean, this team is garbage. Even with Judge, like they're not going to do anything, in my opinion, come playoff time.
I've missed your Yankee haterness so much, Griff. Keep going, keep going.
One guy that just like I almost feel bad for the kid is Anthony Volpe. Like they made this kid out to be the next Derek Jeter. And like I do genuinely feel bad for him because like obviously he's struggled immensely. He clearly is not ready for the major leagues. And it's just like all these. I mean, the first week this guy like walked and stole a base, and Yankee fans were like, "Oh my god, this guy's the greatest thing of all time." And now this guy's hitting like 190, fucking sucks. Like he's terrible. Like he's not terrible, but he's young and he's just not ready for the major leagues. And I feel bad for the kid. But yeah, this Yankee team, you look at the lineup they're running out. They just got swept by Boston. This team sucks. Like they've got a good bullpen, and Garrett Cole's been great. And outside of that, like without Judge, this team is awful. I don't know. What are your thoughts? I just think the Yankees are. I thought they'd be. It's like surprising. I thought obviously they've managed to get more wins than like the Mets, but like it's just another disappoint. Like this team is just not built well. Like their lineup is just
Yeah,
terrible.
you're also competing in a They're also in a ridiculously competitive
Yeah.
division. I mean,
Every team in that division is like
it's
solid.
good. I think
Yeah.
I think what you're saying about the lineup being mid to bad, and I mean, of course, the pitching. The bullpen.
They're
pitching is
banged
better.
up too. Like credit, like give
They're-
like having
But
Bader out and
I think
Judge.
so much of it is amplified because you're playing with 2 of the 5 best teams in baseball in your division right now. And every team in that division, like you said, is sharp. I mean, like I think that like if you want my prediction, like I think that they'll do the classic Yankees thing. Like I think they'll get in the playoffs probably, and then they'll lose in the ALDS like in 4 games. Like I don't know. I just don't think that I don't really like. They're not going anywhere deep in the playoffs, like you said. Like their lineup is just terrible, and I mean, Aaron Judge is such a monster, man. I'm such an
He's
Aaron
so
Judge.
good. He's so good.
I mean, he's just so good. I'm just thinking that, like, he's just so unbelievably good. Like, I mean, I always say he's the best non-Ohtani player in baseball for my money. Like, that's just
Yeah, right now you have to put him over Trout for sure.
yeah. I think right now. I mean, yeah, Mike Trout with his 130 OPS plus, the worst OPS plus of his freaking career is 130. Before that, it was 167, which just almost sounds like a fake stat. But yeah, Shohei who can't stop slugging right now.
Dude, let's talk about Shohei real quick.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of contract is this guy going to get? Like, it's going to be.
It should be like it. I don't know how much.
Like, he's like, think about it. Like, if he was just a hitter, like, he would get like a. I mean, I guess he doesn't really play a position. So as a DH, he'd probably get what, like $200 million contract or so.
I'd say mid 200s for him. He's a monster.
Yeah. I mean, he's like hitting 300 with like
Yeah, with like
he's
leading
on
in
base or like
baseball and
50
home runs.
bombs.
Yeah.
um,
While dealing, by the way, while dealing on the
and you like just as a pitcher, he's got like a 3.2 ERA with like third in strikeouts. Like that's probably another. I don't know. Maybe he'd be like 175, $200 million range, but then you combine it into
yeah.
one player. Yeah,
Uh,
it's got to be like 500-600 million. I think he'll be a Dodger. I know we've kind of. I feel like
yeah,
we've talked about this
we've
off
had
air
this
a little
conversation.
bit.
Yeah.
I was hoping more the Mets, but after this season, I feel like he'd be like, "Why the fuck would I come here? Like this team sucks." But I would do criminal things to get Shohei
Oh,
Ohtani
and I
on my
would,
baseball team.
dude, I would do horrendous things to him on the Phillies. Horrendous things, Griff.
I think the only thing that keeps me hopeful about the Mets is that, we got Billy Epler who signed him with the Angels. We got Kodai Senga, fellow, Japanese pitcher. We'll probably be able to give him the biggest offer. Like I think Steve Cohen wouldn't be outbid. I
No,
just think Shohei would rather go to the Dodgers probably. It's just oh my god, Shohei on that team too. Oh my god. Shohei Betts, Freddie Freeman, and then in the rotation you got him, Walker Bueller coming back, Tony Gonsolin. They re-sign Urias.
yeah, that's just stupid. Yeah, and he's gonna be a Dodger. Like I think it's almost like I would put my house on it that he's gonna be a Dodger at this point. Like
Yeah, and because they have money to spend too.
it's terrible, dude. It's a terrible thing.
How
Terrible.
do they do it? Like it's actually just so like
I don't
envious. Like like the last and it's they don't even like they've had one World Series in the past what like 30 years to show for it or something.
yeah,
But
they're just
like they
but they
just always get the superstars. Like
yeah,
they've got Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, they've had Trey Turner, they had Max Scherzer, like
yeah,
every freaking superstar you can think of.
just ridiculously stupid. And Mookie is just unbelievable, dude. Mookie is so good. I mean,
Yeah.
who's gonna win National League MVP? It'll be Acuna, right?
Acuna, yeah. He's come back and he's
You
a
guys really
beast
talking
again.
like what if Arias ends the year hitting like 402? Like, can you not give it to him if he hits over 400? I don't
If the
think.
Marlins make the playoffs, I feel like it would be interesting, which they're on pace to do.
Yeah,
If they miss the playoffs, then no. But
no, agreed.
if they did, it's interesting. Sandy Alcantara, he's been terrible this year. He's got like
Terrible,
a
and they've still been
5 year.
good, and they've still been
I
good.
know. It's crazy. He's gonna definitely come back and just
Yeah,
shove for the second half and
but
be
that's gonna
like
be
a
scary because I don't know if they're actually good or not. Like, I don't know. The problem with them being fraudulent is that their best player is currently sucking. So, like, if their best player stops sucking, then how? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, how can I call them frauds when their best player is playing like shit? Like, that's yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, real quick to end the episode, like obviously there's been a lot of surprises. I would say Texas to me has been the biggest one, just because I mean Tampa Bay was expected to be good, but Texas wasn't expected to be anything with DeGrom going out.
Yeah.
Who would you say is your biggest like surprise team or team that's exceeded expectations that you think can keep that up and actually compete for a championship?
Baltimore.
Baltimore.
I mean, I thought that they were going to take a leap. I thought that they might have snuck into a wild card spot, but I didn't expect them to nearly 20 games over 500 midway through June. And I think I think it'll be tough to compete with Tampa Bay. Especially because they're not going to win their division, so they'll obviously have to play through the wild card round. But I think that they can compete with anybody. I think that they've been my biggest surprise. But watching them, I mean, I love the way they
Who are
play.
their like starting pitchers? I feel like I haven't watched much Baltimore baseball because I feel like the rotation isn't like, is it good or is it?
It's been good this year. A lot of people are crediting Adley, are saying that basically Adley. And you know who's been their ace all year long? Funny enough,
Is it Kyle Gibson?
Kyle motherfucking Gibson, dude.
What's his ERA?
I couldn't tell you that exactly.
I'll look it up
Let me look up Kyle Gibson right now.
because I was thinking about it the other day actually. I was just like,
Look at
what was
this. This
this?
dude's shoving. Look at his last three starts. I mean, not long, but like he's not giving up any runs.
Let's see the ERA.
I know Kyle Gibson's been excellent all year. I know 3.94. He's been fine. He's been good.
3.94 is solid now.
Yeah.
That's so
Like, he's
crazy.
been good. It's just funny that
So
this guy's the ace because he was just so unbelievably goddamn ass as the Phillies like fifth starter here.
yeah, their starting pitching though hasn't even been that good. That's the crazy thing. Like their lowest guy is what Tyler Wells 3.2 ERA, and then I mean, it's kind of like their bullpen's been good, obviously, with Bautista and Cano, but their bats are just electric. It's so interesting. They're such an interesting team. They really are.
Definitely.
Like I don't get how they're so weird. Like looking at these stats, you'd just be like, how is this team as good as they are? All right. Well, I think that will do it for this episode of Outside the Arena. Happy to be back. We'll definitely have a lot more content coming out soon. Hopefully, maybe even get some guests on here. Try and get that rolling again. If you haven't already, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram at Outside the Arena Podcast. Check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts there at Outside the Arena as well. Happy to be back. And stay tuned. We'll definitely have an episode out next week. So thanks for watching this episode of Outside the Arena.